1 in 8 American adults is currently taking a GLP-1 drug. That's roughly 40 million people. Taking a medication that suppresses appetite, makes food less appealing, and in many cases fundamentally changes how much a person wants to eat. And the Novo Nordisk CEO, the man who makes Ozempic and Wegovy, said publicly in an interview with Bloomberg that food companies have been calling him to voice their fears. The people who sell you chips and fast food and frozen meals are calling the guy who makes the appetite suppressant to tell him they're scared. That call is the whole story. Because Ozempic was not supposed to do this. It was a diabetes drug. It was supposed to help people manage blood sugar. It was not supposed to become one of the most significant economic forces reshaping the American food industry. And yet here we are. Let's actually talk about what happened and why the numbers are as insane as they are. GLP-1 stands for glucagon-like peptide 1. It's a hormone your gut naturally produces after you eat. It tells your brain you're full. It slows digestion. It reduces appetite. GLP-1 agonist drugs, which include Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro, and Zepbound, mimic that hormone and amplify it dramatically. The result is that people on these medications often feel full much faster, have significantly reduced cravings, and in many cases report that foods they used to love just don't appeal to them anymore. Ozempic was approved by the FDA in 2017 as a treatment for type 2 diabetes. Wegovy, a higher dose version of the same drug, was approved for weight loss in 2021. And then social media happened. Celebrities started talking about it. TikTok started talking about it. Doctors started prescribing it off-label for weight loss. Telehealth companies built entire businesses around making it easier to get a prescription. Compounding pharmacies started making cheaper versions during the shortage period. And the adoption curve went almost vertical. By late 2025, roughly 1 in 8 American adults was on a GLP-1. That is not a niche medication number. That is a number that starts moving the entire food economy. Now let's talk about what these drugs actually do to consumption, because this is the part that sent food company executives into emergency strategy sessions. A survey by EY Parthenon found that about 70% of GLP-1 users who report consuming fewer calories said they were snacking less. Not cutting back slightly. Snacking less is a significant behavioral change. GLP-1 users influence an estimated $56 billion in household food and beverage spend, according to research from IFF. And that influence is not just on the person taking the drug. Researchers found that when one person in a household goes on a GLP-1, the entire household's eating patterns shift. The partner who is not on Ozempic starts eating smaller portions too because meals are being prepared differently. The kids are eating what the parent is eating. The grocery cart changes for the whole family, not just the person with the prescription. So the actual consumer behavior impact is significantly larger than the number of prescriptions would suggest. Walmart noticed. In 2024, Walmart's chief health officer told the press that customers on GLP-1 medications were buying less food. Not different food. Less food. That's the sentence that should terrify every food company on earth. You can adapt your product to a diet trend. You can reformulate for keto. You can go gluten-free. You can launch a low-calorie line. But you cannot adapt your product to people simply wanting less of everything. Diet trends redirect spending. They don't eliminate it. Someone on keto stops buying bread but starts buying more meat and cheese. The total grocery spend stays roughly the same. It just moves around. GLP-1 is different because the mechanism is not a preference shift. It's a biological suppression of appetite. The stomach empties slower. The brain receives fullness signals earlier. Cravings for high-fat and high-sugar foods specifically tend to diminish. You can't make a GLP-1 friendly Oreo that tricks someone's gut hormone into wanting more cookies. The gut hormone is the one making the decision now. And that's what makes this structurally different from every other health trend the food industry has navigated in the last 50 years. Now here's where the food industry's response gets genuinely fascinating from a business infrastructure standpoint. Because the industry did not panic publicly. They adapted. Fast. And the adaptation playbook tells you everything about how the food industry actually operates when it feels threatened. The first move was portion sizes. Olive Garden tested smaller portions at select locations. Clinton Hall, a New York restaurant chain, launched something called the Teeny Weeny Mini Meal featuring mini burgers, mini fries, and a mini beer. Smoothie King launched an entire GLP-1 menu. The logic is simple. If the customer is going to eat less, give them a smaller product at a price that maintains your margin. Charge the same or more per calorie delivered. Make the smaller portion feel intentional and premium rather than insufficient. Coca-Cola announced it would start selling more mini cans at convenience stores. The mini can is not a new product. Coca-Cola has sold mini cans for years. But suddenly they are being positioned as GLP-1 adjacent. The can size didn't change. The marketing angle did. The second move was the protein pivot. People on GLP-1 medications are strongly encouraged by doctors to prioritize protein intake because the muscle loss risk during rapid weight loss is real. The food industry heard that and immediately started printing the word protein on everything. Starbucks launched protein-boosted milk and cold foam. The entire snack category started reformulating or relabeling. General Mills expanded its protein offerings. Conagra, which owns Slim Jim, Chef Boyardee, Marie Callender's, and Orville Redenbacher's, added a GLP-1 friendly label to 26 of its healthy choice frozen meals. Nestlé launched an entirely new brand called Vital Pursuit, marketed specifically as a companion for GLP-1 medication users, with higher protein and fiber and controlled portion sizes. The brand name is not subtle. Vital Pursuit. They named their new product line after the thing Ozempic users are trying to do. The third move was the label arms race. GLP-1 friendly has become one of the fastest growing claims in the food industry. It doesn't have a regulatory definition. The FDA has not defined what GLP-1 friendly means on a package. Any food company can put it on anything. Which means the term is simultaneously everywhere and meaningless, which is exactly how the food industry has always treated dietary claims. Remember when everything was low-fat in the 90s and fat-free just meant they added more sugar? GLP-1 friendly is the 2025 version of that. A label designed to make you feel like the food is supporting your health journey while the company figures out whether any of this is actually true. Now here's the uncomfortable business reality underneath all of the adaptation. None of it solves the actual problem. The actual problem is that 40 million people are eating significantly less food than they were a year ago, and that number is going to keep growing. Mondelez, which makes Oreo, Chips Ahoy, and Triscuit, did an internal analysis and concluded that GLP-1 adoption could reduce its product volumes by up to 1.5% by 2035. 1.5% sounds small. Mondelez does about $36 billion in annual revenue. 1.5% of $36 billion is $540 million. $500 million of revenue gone because people are eating fewer cookies. And that's the estimate from the company that sells the cookies. The independent analysts are sometimes less optimistic. Newsweek reported in July 2025 that Ozempic was costing grocery stores billions. Restaurant foot traffic declined 1.9% in the third quarter of fiscal 2026 according to food service distributor Cisco's own SEC filing. O'Charley's and 99 restaurants saw comparable store sales drop 13.6% and 0.2% respectively in the first half of 2025. These are not small numbers for an industry that typically measures success in single-digit percentage point changes. The drug is also getting cheaper and more available, which means the adoption curve is not near its peak. GLP-1 oral pill versions are hitting the US market, which removes the needle barrier that had kept some potential users away. Compounding pharmacy versions have driven the effective cost down significantly for people who can't afford the branded version. More than half of American adults, roughly 137 million people, are medically eligible to take these medications according to KFF. The 40 million already on them is potentially just the beginning. There's also a behavioral stickiness that the food industry is counting on, but that may not materialize the way they hope. Conagra's head of demand science said that if they can attract consumers while they're on GLP-1 medications, those consumers are likely to stick around even if they stop taking the drugs. The theory is that people who discover healthy choice frozen meals while on Ozempic will keep buying them after they cycle off the medication. That's possible. It's also possible that people who cycle off GLP-1 medications revert to their prior eating patterns, which is what the clinical data actually suggests for most people. The drug suppresses appetite while you're on it. When you stop, the appetite comes back. Which means the food industry's best-case scenario might be a permanently medicated customer base that eats less forever, and their worst-case scenario is a customer base that goes on and off the drug and is unpredictable either way. Neither of those is a great business environment. The pharma side of this story is completely different. Novo Nordisk, which makes Ozempic and Wegovy, had revenues of about $40 billion in 2024. Their market cap peaked at over $600 billion, briefly making them the most valuable company in Europe. Bigger than LVMH. Bigger than SAP. Bigger than any company on the continent. A Danish pharmaceutical company that makes insulin and diabetes drugs became the most valuable business in Europe because they accidentally created the most in-demand drug in the world. Eli Lilly, which makes Mounjaro and Zepbound, was similarly ascendant, briefly overtaking ExxonMobil and Johnson & Johnson in market cap. Both companies are building out manufacturing capacity as fast as they can because demand has consistently outstripped supply since these drugs went mainstream. The shortage during 2023 and 2024 was so severe that the FDA put both Ozempic and Wegovy on its drug shortage list, which opened the door for compounding pharmacies to legally produce cheaper versions. Those compounding versions drove down the effective cost for millions of people who couldn't afford the $1,000 plus monthly list price of the branded versions. The FDA eventually cracked down on most compounding as the shortage resolved, but the period where cheap compounded versions were widely available massively accelerated adoption among lower-income Americans who would otherwise have been priced out entirely. Novo Nordisk is spending billions on new manufacturing plants. They're in a race against Eli Lilly and against generic competition that will eventually arrive when patents expire. The drug that is quietly dismantling the economics of the American snack aisle is simultaneously one of the fastest-growing revenue generators in pharmaceutical history. That tension is the whole story. One industry's disruption is another industry's gold rush. Novo Nordisk didn't set out to restructure how Americans eat. They set out to treat diabetes. But the ripple effects of a drug that suppresses appetite at the scale of tens of millions of users are touching everything from the chip aisle to the fast food drive-through to the frozen meal section to the restaurant reservation book. The food industry is adapting because it has to. Smaller portions. More protein. New labels. New brands. New menu items. But adaptation only works if the underlying demand exists. And what Ozempic actually did is reduce the underlying demand. Not shift it to a different type of food. Reduce it. The question the food industry is quietly trying not to answer out loud is what happens when the number of people on these medications goes from 40 million to 80 million. Or 100 million. Or higher. More than half of American adults, roughly 137 million people, are medically eligible to take these medications according to KFF. The 40 million already on them is potentially just the beginning. And the cost barrier that kept mass adoption at bay is collapsing fast. Oral pill versions are hitting the US market, which removes the needle barrier that kept some potential users away entirely. Compounding versions brought the monthly cost down to under $200 for many people during the shortage period. Eli Lilly has been running a program called Lilly Direct that lets patients get Zepbound directly for around $400 a month without insurance. As manufacturing scales up and patent cliffs eventually arrive, these prices will only continue to drop. The trajectory points toward a future where GLP-1 medications are as accessible and affordable as statins or blood pressure pills, which tens of millions of Americans take daily without thinking much about it. At that scale, smaller cans and GLP-1 friendly labels stop being a strategy and start being a delay. The Novo Nordisk CEO got those calls from food companies for a reason. They were not calling to congratulate him. They were calling because they could see where this was going. A drug developed to treat diabetes is in the process of doing something no government regulation, no public health campaign, and no diet trend has ever managed to do at scale. It is making Americans eat less. Permanently. Biologically. At the level of the gut hormone. And the infrastructure of the entire American food economy, the farms, the factories, the supply chains, the restaurants, the grocery stores, the snack aisles, was built around the assumption that Americans would always eat more. Not less. Rise and ruin. Every time.